Sandra is a sharp CMO with over 20 plus years of B2B experience. So it's no surprise her homepage sounded legit, but it was doing her a disservice. The copy led with her resume, not her offer. The social proof hidden in an 11-point font. We unpacked how to shift from W2 coded to business owner energy, why being the builder is her real niche, and the dead simple CTA tweak that will convert way better. Let's dive into it.
Hey, I'm Sandra Rand, and I am a fractional marketing strategist that works with companies in the e-commerce vertical.
I love it. So for people who might be listening to this and don't know much about you, can you tell a little bit more about kind of what specifically you do, what your specific services are, and how you help these consumer brands?
Yeah, so I'm a, seasoned B2B marketer. Started my career in the sort of brand and communications vertical or function, and quickly started finding my footing with early stage companies, which allowed me to expand my sort of purview beyond brand and communication into all different factors of marketing. As we all know, when you're working at a startup or an early stage companies, if you're in the marketing seat, you're doing a little bit of everything, a lot of hats that you wear. So yeah, I found my career sort of very cyclically in that sort of environment, right? Head of marketing, first marketing hire, had to take on any and every facet of developing a strategy from scratch, 0 to 1. Establishing some of the foundational operations pieces and infrastructure, building campaigns from scratch, hiring the team. And the common thread amongst all the companies that I was working with were, one, they were either early stage or in a scale up phase where they had established product market fit, but had not done any of their own marketing and wanted to sort of diversify beyond word of mouth. And then they were all in this e-commerce vertical. So they're not consumer facing, but they serve those consumer facing brands that are selling on Shopify, selling on Amazon, D2C, that sort of thing. So every company that I've worked with has been focused towards that e-commerce, either owner, founder, or marketer.
I love it. That's like a super, super niche, but also a super valuable vertical as well. So I know today we're going to kind of dive a little bit more into your own homepage. So if we can kind of like pull that up on the screen, the first thing that I always like to notice is tell me a little bit more about kind of what was your thought process the last time you went in and updated your own homepage.
Yeah, I mean, the last time that I updated my own homepage was when I first launched it, just a few months ago, rather. I started my fractional work at the beginning of this year and kind of waited a couple months to have anything formalized. I had heard conflicting theories around, oh, you don't need your own website. You just need to have a good talk track, a good sales sort of process. And then, no, you actually absolutely need a website and a portfolio to be able to point people towards. So I had dragged my feet on it a little bit, came to the conclusion that I was just going to use the free or sort of low cost Squarespace that was part of my Google domain that I bought. And so it was easy enough to sort of function for what I needed, which was just basically, a very early stage homepage just to sort of talk about what my experience was, what I could offer to the companies I want to work with.
Yeah, I love it. Definitely big fan of particularly, starting off with just like a normal template and then just kind of customizing it and really focusing in on the messaging first and foremost, and then layer and design and also update your messaging as what you're learning from all of your customers. My kind of immediate thing that I first see when I see this website, and I've looked at a lot of fractional websites, is, and this is something I see across the board, across all of them, it tends to be very, very focused on the fractional and a little bit less focused on who your customer is. So even your H1 is, hi, I'm Sandra. And then you kind of almost bury in what you actually do in the second part of this, which I actually think is pretty spot on. And you maybe lead with that instead, which is, hey, I work with e-commerce and consumer brands. What if you just were to flip that and you were to just be like, I am the fractional you go to, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more of it because I see later on your page. But what if you just were to flip that and just almost reverse the two? So you're reading with that pain point of immediately qualifying the niche that you serve.
Yeah, that's absolutely valid. I can do the, pull the Sandra out, maybe that's an eyebrow or something, and then make that value prop or that clear. You want someone that reads that and knows and identifies very quickly as like, yes, that is me.
Yeah. And then having a photo of yourself makes sense in this context because you are still, you are the fractional CMO. That makes sense to add that personality. My next question I have to you is, what do you want the CTA to be from someone who sees your page? Do you want it to be Let's Chat, or do you want to derive them directly to, I see you have 3 different packages, and we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about it. I assume that when people are looking for a fractional head of marketing, the first thing they want to do is kind of vet that person and reach out to them. So,
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I'm not intentionally directing folks to this website. It doesn't get a ton of traffic, and been getting a couple. What happens when you do the Let's Chat is that it opens up my calendar, and then it allows you to just book right then and there. I've gotten a couple that just
Mhm.
magically show up on my calendar, so I can only presume that they find it through my website. But yeah, I mean, probably giving them a little bit more context about me is a wiser choice, or maybe a dual button link situation where they have the option.
Yeah, definitely. I've recommended this multiple times now, which is I'm not opposed to having a dual CTA, particularly because you're on your own website. There's basically only 6 things you can see above the fold. It's your experience,
Yeah.
your pricing, and I can even get into why my experience is maybe not necessarily needed. Pricing, your LinkedIn, schedule time to chat, Let's Chat. So you have 2 places where you're both saying Let's Chat. Perfect. You have one in the navigation menu where most people expect it. You have Let's Chat below. Maybe you go, because you're already going to your calendar link. I actually do something very similar on my own website. Just change it to like schedule a call. And I bet you just
Mm.
that little tiny tweak is going to see more conversions there. But you said something really interesting even right before that, which was your website isn't necessarily your default place that people find you. Where is that default place? Is it LinkedIn? Is it some sort of community, something else?
Yeah, it tends to be LinkedIn. Even the folks that I connect with through word of mouth, people are sharing my LinkedIn profile as opposed to my website.
Yeah. Do you think that's because your LinkedIn is more dialed in and your messaging is more on point? Or do you think it's just because it's just the first thing people see from you?
I think it's just the people that know me, like know to easily find me at LinkedIn. I would say that the messaging is pretty equally echoed between my profile. Maybe it's a little bit more truncated on LinkedIn versus this. I mean, truthfully, so you'll see some of the content below is like just regurgitation of my resume. So, yeah, I think that that's probably why is it like LinkedIn is just such a familiar way to share information.
This might be the most unconventional take ever. And I'm sure I might get people fighting me about this in the comments of the video. But for someone like yourself, you might want to do a dual CTA where it's one is schedule a call and the other one is learn more, connect with me on LinkedIn. Because if LinkedIn
Mm.
is your primary channel, should you should I tell most people to automatically direct people off of your website onto a rented platform? No. But in your specific scenario, it might make a ton of sense.
Yeah, yep, you're exactly right because there's a lot more context there. There's a lot more of my personality represented on my posts and comments and things of that nature. And growing the network is never a bad thing. So even if we don't end up working together, having that connect CTA is great. That makes sense. I like it.
Particularly since you don't have a news, since I don't think you have a newsletter or a podcast or something that
Mm-mm.
you can derive people to,
Right.
getting people as your secondary CTA to your LinkedIn is just smart.
Yep. Yep. I like that. Yep. I'd
Yeah.
love to weave that in.
The other thing I would challenge you on is your LinkedIn is way dialed in. Make sure that your website is just as dialed in as your LinkedIn.
Mm. Yeah. Like I said, haven't touched it since it launched. It's been sort of an afterthought, so it makes sense.
Yeah. And then if you want to scroll down to the next section where it says founders tell me all these things. So you have these 4 things that are almost like fuzzy little bullets. Are these insights that founders have directly told you? Or are these the things that you're just guessing on?
No, I like because I've worked with so many founders in these same sort of boats, like these are a very distilled down version of like this is the song and dance. Whenever I talk to someone who's a great fit for me, it's one of or many of these 4 things.
Yeah. In that case, I would definitely say make that way stronger. Like right now, this feels like an afterthought, and all you're saying is founders tell me all this time. That's what my eye is drawn to instead
Mhm.
of those 4 key points. Because if that is literally what founders are telling you every single time of these consumer brands, make that be at least an H2 thing so that people just automatically
Mm.
see that.
Yeah, okay. All right, call that out. It's sort of its own section, make it a little bit more larger. Yep, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then the next piece that I'm actually going to kind of drill into that I found really interesting, which is why I'm a good fit for companies. And then
Yep.
you list the companies that you work with and why you're a good fit. Why is that buried in like 11-point font instead of directly in your hero section?
It's just more about, to your point, like this is all about me and this is just more selling about me. I assumed that maybe a bold here would be enough to call people's eye to it, perhaps not. But yeah, there's a lot of like sort of proof points and just reinforcement here that's just kind of buried. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I would say if anything, if there's anything to call out from that, it's just take those companies, add their logos, assuming you have approvals or just you can make that happen, and put
Yeah.
them right, like either right in your hero section or right below it as it's that row of logos.
Yeah. Yep,
Is
that's
it
true.
still templated? Yes, but there's a reason that template's there. It's because it works.
Yeah, yeah, yep, that's fair enough. And I mean, let's be honest, when we do work with clients and we work on their websites, that's social proof is some of the first things that you plug in there. That's right.
Yep. Absolutely. It's a classic case of the cobbler has no shoes. You spend
Right.
all of your time on clients, and then suddenly the things that are obvious for you there become blind spots to you if you're on website.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That makes a ton of sense.
So, kind of diving in a little bit more into this. Okay, go back up
Oh,
a
sorry.
little bit more.
Yep.
So, it's basically okay, I know these audiences well, I know the pain points. Yeah.
Yep.
All of
Yep.
this is fine. Maybe tighten up the copy just a little bit more because it is such a wall of text. But I
Yeah.
suspect that even just having just zoning in on those 4 key bullet points and making those be the obvious ones is really what you want right here.
Right. Right. Another one of those things where people are like, yes, that is me. I see myself in this. Yep. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. You're just trying to make sure that you're trying to make it really easy for a founder at one of these consumer brands to like immediately see themselves in this and want to self-select and choose
Yep.
you versus everyone else who's in your vertical. Scroll down. Okay, so your impact. This is a wall of text.
It sure
This
is.
is
So this
first.
is
Go on.
And I was gonna say, like, in absence of case studies, right? My fractional work is fairly new, but I have 20 years of experience to draw from. And so it was a little bit of like I can't really format some of these things in case study versions. So this was really just like a cut and paste of some of my resume points, massaged some messaging, added some additional things that you don't find there, and tried and like painting a picture of the breadth of what I can do because yes, I do have that spike in brand, but content, events, demand like from scratch people leader. And I know that like people don't look to fractionals necessarily to be like the initial people leader, as you're with my kinds of clients that are 0 to 1. Eventually, you get to that point, but to reinforce like I understand good talent, I understand how to use good talent and that sort of thing. So I think I'm trying to say a lot. Yeah, anyway, I agree. Formatting is terrible.
I I would definitely agree with all that. You bring up some really, really amazing points. I would also say, to be blunt, it's a wall of text, and a busy founder is probably not going to read all of this. You also
Yeah.
feel like you probably bury some. You hinted at some of this in just what you were talking about, and then I just see this in the text as well. Like you kind
Yeah.
of bury some of the most interesting pieces that I wonder if they should just be called out either in your hero section or even just above it, where it's like you've already acknowledged, hey, I'm like usually the first marketing hire. That's really important, particularly for your niche.
Yeah.
Why is that an 11-point font? Like instead of
Right.
my impact, it could be, going from 0 to your first marketing hire to your first marketing team could be the H2 for the section.
Yeah.
And then I like the bullet points that you have where you're kind of talking about the different ways that you've helped clients. And I totally get you might not have the case studies that are like with the client's name and all the results,
Right.
but there's other ways you can kind of showcase that, even if it is literally an anonymized case study. Have you thought about doing
Mm-hmm.
something like that where you're just talking about, hey, I created an in-person rebrand launch for whatever company that was, maybe then just put like, here's, the anonymized version of this story
Yeah.
that can still sell and still give you tons of proof without necessarily having to name a name.
Yeah, yeah, that's true too. Again, one of those things that like pops in your mind and it's a tool belt or it's in our tool belt for our clients, but you don't do it for yourself. So I hadn't thought about revamping that or restructuring it into a case study format. But that's a good idea.
Yeah, what's stopping you from spending, 4 hours on that's for 2 to 4 hours on a random day and just taking one of those points and turning that into just an anonymized story?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know I like that. And then you could sort of that person or whoever my ICP is can sort of self-select as like, oh, that's a problem that I have. Let me dive deeper into that. Okay.
Out of that laundry list of let me rephrase this in a different way. Out of the laundry list wall of text right here, with all of the examples you share, are there potentially 2 to 3 of them that just come up across all of your sales calls, across most of your clients, where you can group them?
Honestly, no, because I am finding that a lot of the companies that I'm working with all need a little bit of a different thing. And so some tends to be very tactical, very like get started kind of approach. Some tends to be very higher level. Should we go broader demand gen, brand awareness, ABM, like, and so I get what you're asking. Like, yes, I could probably group them in certain ways, but the conversations I pull from the entire like portfolio of my work, you
Yeah.
know, constantly pulling from different chapters of my career.
So it is really a custom project each time.
Largely, I wouldn't call myself a productized fractional at this point, which I kind of like. I like doing a little bit of different things. My contracts all look a little bit different. It keeps things interesting on my side. So,
Okay, let's circle back to that in a second. If you want to go down to pricing,
yeah.
you said something really interesting there, which is most of your contracts are custom, yet
Mhm.
the way you work together feels very productized and the same thing each time. So which is it?
Oh, really good call out. I would say it is largely the former. They're all very different. Um, I would say I pull from my pricing, and you can tell there's like, this one is not something that anyone has taken advantage of, right? More
Mhm.
advisory in coaching. Some of mine fall into this bucket, which is like a 5K swing, right? And that's kind of where I've been pricing depending on the need. Um, and it basically gives people a ballpark. But I do in my mind bucket them in certain ways depending on what they are, but the contracts are very different.
Yeah. In that case, because you just said it yourself, hey, it's custom projects, and most of them fall into that middle tier, which is what I suspected based off of rule of threes. And most times people kind of put their most popular one, or at least should put their most popular option as that middle tier. What I
Yeah.
would say in your case is get rid of the pricing tiers because it's going to make you
Mhm.
look way more productized and probably is actually going to, in some cases, and again, test this with your actual customers and on sales calls. But my guess is seeing this is probably causing people to think, oh, I maybe don't need her right now or something like that. And what would actually might be better for you is just to go swing heavily into that, at least for right now, into that fractional marketing leadership tier and make
Yeah.
it so incredibly clear that it's custom. And instead of putting like a different number, you can be like prices start at 5K a month. Something like that where it
Yeah.
just shows confidence and also you're showcasing these are really custom engagements. What about something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I also think that in this being my first year, I
Mhm.
have agreed to be a little flexible and offer some founder-friendly rates just to get my portfolio built out, get some good word of mouth and some testimonials at the end of my engagement. So I do think my pricing this year just looks a little like not it looks a little custom for
Yeah.
everybody for that exact reason. I'm feeling it out. I'm trying to see what the market wants and needs from me as a fractional and what I can deliver. Maybe this makes sense for like year 2 or year 3 in my journey.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And something else is if you're hesitant and you are maybe giving rates that are below or above that normal range, just, some of a really slick way to get around that, especially in year one, is to be like pricing starts at, and then it's put your minimum floor of like, they don't necessarily need to know. And most people are not going to expect you're going to give your minimum for anyway. Is that something that you'd
Yeah.
be comfortable with?
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, no one has been at the 5K range. It's all been
Yeah.
a little bit toward the other side, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, just like, just put like a minimum, or you don't even have to because you are, you know, in year one of as a fractional CMO, maybe just put something else where it's like to leave off the pricing altogether. Like you don't have to have a price in there. Do I think it's ideal to have a price? Yes, but it could be more, it could be less, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, a range is at least a good place to start and opens the
Yeah,
conversation. That makes sense.
absolutely. And if we want to go back to that wall of text, okay. So of that wall of text, do you even think that you like, of everything that you said there, could you maybe, given that you've started right now where it is custom and most of this work custom, some of it is like, tactical versus very high level. Could you maybe organize this in a way that still showcases all of the really good results you have, but just mapped out a little bit more like how you normally, structure engagements?
Yeah, you're right. It does make sense to at least tell the story in a way that's easier to follow, where, predominantly I'd say 50% of my engagements are like from scratch strategy, 0 to 1, they have nothing. And then some of them are very specific around like comms and brand and messaging or positioning. Then another set is something else. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I also was fearful of creating a homepage that had 15 different sections. It doesn't have to be that, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Why are you fearful also of having a section of 15 different sections as opposed to what you have now?
Because like we know as marketers, no one reads all 15 sections. No one's reading this either though, right? So
yeah. You just literally said the quiet part out loud. Do you think any founder is reading that much text in one section?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So maybe having, maybe don't need 15 sections, but having 6 sections that are just lighter with visuals or even just like a screenshot of like a Loom video that you send a client could go a very long way in showcasing this is what this looks like. And then I'm also just going to challenge you again, where it's like you're also you've buried your social proof in the last section, and you buried your, hey, I take people from 0 to 1. Like that's a really big value prop for a lot of these brands. That should be in your hero section. Would you agree?
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. I think I need folks like you to mirror that back as like, here's what I thought my differentiator was, working for B2B companies, that e-commerce sector. Yeah, that's a niche. Like that's important to call out, but there's more value under that. That's just where I play, not what I do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, if anything, that's literally what I've seen across many of these videos now, which is the amount of people who are kind of catering towards industry as their niche instead of what their actual niche is, which is, in your case, I'd argue going from 0 to 1 or going from 0 to your first marketing team, that is a way stronger niche, even if it's still within, and is put for consumer brands, that is so much stronger than just for consumer brands or just for 0 to 1 or 0 to your first marketing team. You're now the person they think of, the fractional they think of when they're going from, I need to build my first marketing team before a consumer brand.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I was just talking to a new client last week, and he was like he has a marketing team, but they have a whole area that they need to have built out. And he's like, you're a builder, and I don't have builders that could do this. And so that language, like I liked that. And me saying 0 to 1 to him was like, yes, like he lit up. It's like 0 to 1, that's what I need for this. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Your client just gave you a gift too. Just use the word builder.
Yeah, that's true. That like rang with me and it stuck with me, and like I've never called myself that or been called that before, and so I really liked it because it's so true. Like that's what I do. So yeah.
Totally. And if you want to scroll back up to the top, the other thing that I would challenge you on is, why do you even need my experience? Your experience is already on your homepage, and that just makes it look like you're a commodity as opposed to having a defined offer.
Yeah, I mean that's just the anchor to bring you down, right, to the bottom or to that section. So yeah, it's like you said, reworking this section is could make a much bigger impact.
Or if you want to keep it, call it something like services.
Yeah.
Something that just makes it scream like you're actually a fractional CMO business owner, not just another commodity
person to hire,
marketing leader.
Right. Yes, I'm approaching it like a W-2, which I shouldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to uncover here, but before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to chat about?
No, this is amazing. Thank you for the feedback. It's always a gift, right, to have someone reflect back to you, someone from your experience that does this every day. Like it's very, very helpful. It's really funny how those of us that do it for others can't do it for ourselves. So really, really grateful for the feedback. And yeah, it's well, that's outdated. So I have a little bit of work to do. I think I know what I'll be doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to Clarity Jam.